Hello and welcome to this episode of Knobi Cooks. Today we are baking a quiche Lorraine. This traditional dish from northwestern France with its salty short pastry dough and its filling made from cream, ham, eggs and cheese is truly something special. It goes well alongside a pumpkin soup and is the perfect match for the cold seasons. If you enjoy my content, please consider leaving a like and subscribing to my channel. So first of all, let's make sure that we have all our ingredients ready. You can see I have prepared mine on the countertop and they are all waiting to be used. In addition to that, also prepare your springform pans and any other utensil you will need for this dish. If you are using metal springform pans, I recommend you lay in some parchment paper at the bottom. This is the easiest way to prevent any of the short pastry dough from sticking to the bottom of the pan. And if you're using a springform made from silicone with a glass base, sprinkle in some breadcrumbs. They too will prevent the dough from sticking too much. Once the pans are ready, we will start by cutting and dicing our onion. Go for fine onion dices so they will blend better into your quiche filling. Once the onion is diced, we will now dice our cooked ham. Here I'll leave it up to you whether you prefer larger ham chunks in your quiche filling or smaller ones. And maybe as an upfront disclaimer, for the traditional quiche you would use bacon or some kind of smoked bacon. Though my mom has always prepared it using cooked ham, and that's why I'm sticking to cooked ham here. Choose whichever you like more. Once both the onion and the ham or bacon are cut, we will now saute it in our pan. By sauteing the ingredients first, we will on the one hand soften the onions a little bit, and we will add some additional taste to both the onions and the ham by roasting them. If you decided to use bacon, then put less fat or butter into your pan. Otherwise, with all of the fat from the bacon, you could end up with very fatty ingredients for the filling. And since we will add cheese and cream later on, the filling is already quite heavy. Though while those two ingredients are now sauteing, we can turn our attention to the leek. First take your leek and then cut it into smaller portions. And then after that, cut it into rough quarters or halves, depending on how chunky you like your leek. And here is another disclaimer for you. The very traditional and pure quiche Lorraine usually comes without leek. The version that includes leek is either more modern or the quiche version more commonly prepared in another region of France, the Alsace. Since the Alsace is more close to where I'm from, I grew up with the quiche Lorraine version with leek. Though in this video I will show you how to prepare both versions. The difference is indeed very small. The one comes with leek and the other without. So simply leave out the leek if you want to go for a more traditional version of the quiche. And here's yet another disclaimer for you. Since I am also including cheese in my variation of quiche, this is another break with the tradition. Though here's the nice thing about cooking. You simply adjust all the recipes to your taste. There is no harm in that. Simply don't try to sell your dishes as original or 100% traditional if you do so. And talking about cheese, I'm using mountain cheese for this quiche. First I will roughly cut it into dices and then later on I will shred it for the filling. For this I am using my trusty hand blender. And as a mountain cheese I would recommend you to either use an Emmentaler or a Gruyere. The onion and the ham have now sizzled away for long enough in our pan. It's time to take them out and put them into the bowl in which we will prepare our filling later on. Let both cool for a while so our eggs won't curdle later on when we add them into the bowl. The next step is optional, and if you prefer your leek with much more bite, then skip it. Though if you prefer a softer leek, then do what I do and also saute your leek for a little bit. Not only will the leek be softer, but it will also be less strong in taste. And I personally don't like the very strong leek taste you sometimes get from fresh leek. Next up, like I already announced, we will shred our mountain cheese. The cheese doesn't have to be super fine since we will add it into our filling, though it shouldn't be super chunky either. If you don't have a good way to blend your cheese, well, you can also go for shredded cheese from the supermarket. To get the most out of your quiche, go for something with a tangy taste. And while we are still waiting for the leek to soften, we can already add the cream into our measuring cup alongside our milk. All in all, my 2 cups of cream and the milk already in the measuring cup add up to a little more than half a liter. If you want to get a creamier filling, you could also go for cream only, though be aware that will add lots of fat into your filling. Let's take another look at our leek. It looks quite glassy and feels soft, so we can now turn off the heat. The leek is basically ready. Like the onion and the ham before, we will also let the leek cool for a while. And now make some space on your countertop. It's time to turn our attention to the salty short pastry dough for our quiche. Though before that, turn on your oven and set it to 200 degrees Celsius or 392 degrees Fahrenheit top and bottom heat. Because once we put our quiche into the oven, we want the filling to curdle as soon as possible. Have you done that? Great. Now put some flour onto your countertop so the dough doesn't stick to it. And then separate the dough in as many equally sized pieces as you want to prepare quiches. And if you don't know how to prepare a salty short pastry dough, I've made a video for that you can check out if you want to. Similar to pizza dough, first shape your dough pieces into balls and then press them down into the flour. Then continue by gradually flattening them against your countertop. Make sure the dough stays in a round shape. And once the dough is flattened enough, take a rolling pin and roll over it to flatten it even more. Make sure to have enough flour at hand during these steps. And whenever the dough starts sticking, simply add some more flour onto your countertop or into your hands. Once the dough is slightly larger than your springform pan base, put it into your springform pan and start shaping some of the dough into a rim. Try to get this rim as evenly high everywhere as you can. Later on, we want as little as possible of the filling to touch the rim of the springform pan. It should all be contained inside the dough. And to be honest, I'm not the best example here. I had guests over and was hurrying to get these quiches done. So sorry for the bad example. And while it might seem difficult or take some tries, it is a great baking technique that can also help you out for baking cakes. Once you have finished with your first piece of dough, simply repeat the process for every other piece of dough you have left. And maybe a small note at this point, the recipe calls for enough dough for 2 quiches, but since I had guests over, I simply scaled it up to 3 quiches. Now we will only need to finish our filling. So next up, we will season our ham and the onion. For this, simply add parsley, black pepper, salt and a good bit of nutmeg into your bowl. Though be careful with the salt, especially if you're using bacon instead of ham. The ham/bacon as well as the cheese are already quite salty by themselves. If you want to go for an extra crispy pastry dough, then you can put the springforms into your oven at this point and pre-bake the dough for a little bit. This will also help to prevent your dough from getting too soggy by the filling. So I actually highly recommend to include this step in your cooking process. I sadly forgot it for this video. Sometimes I think I'm not the best example for making cooking tutorials. But well, here I am. The next step you see here is optional too. I will separate the egg yolks from the egg whites. You can put the egg yolks directly to the other ingredients in the large bowl. I'm separating the eggs so I can whip up the egg white before adding it to the other ingredients. If you do this, you will end up with a more fluffy filling, though it also means some extra work. If you want to skip this step, then simply add both egg yolk and egg white to the other ingredients. But if you separate the eggs, make sure that little to no egg yolk ends up in your egg white. If too much lands in there, you won't be able to whip it up. Speaking of which, before we whip the egg white, we will first add a little bit of salt into it. And we will also add a little bit of salt to our cream milk mixture. Then simply take a hand mixer and start whipping up the egg white. You want to get it as firm as possible. And once you have finished whipping up the egg white, you can choose to go for another optional step. This step is whipping up the cream milk mixture. The reason is the same as with whipping up the egg white. It will simply make the filling more fluffy. Though here too you can save some time and just add the cream and milk to the other ingredients straight away. Which would, by the way, also be the traditional way of preparing quiche. Though I very much like to go that extra mile for the fluffy filling. And in general, whipping up egg white or cream before adding it to any kind of filling, whether it be quiche or cake, can really pimp your dish. One of my favorite examples for this is a cheesecake. If you're baking cheesecakes from time to time, you should really try it out. Because let's be honest, it might be an extra step, though this step takes very little time. Just keep in mind to bake your goods as soon as possible if you go for the whipping method to keep all of the air trapped. If you wait for too long, your foam will probably crumble. Okay, now the moment of truth has come. We have prepared our springform pans and we have all the ingredients ready for the filling. So let's start putting our quiches together. First, mix all of the ingredients together in a large bowl. And if you have whipped up both cream and egg white, make sure to stir it under properly. And once you have done that, the filling is ready to be put into the springform pans and into our prepared dough shapes. If you go for the whip method, I just have to put a disclaimer here. The heavier ingredients like ham, cheese and onions will probably sink down to the bottom of the filling. So you shouldn't just pour the cream into your springform pans, because then the ingredients may end up spread very unevenly, meaning you could end up with a quiche with only whipped cream and egg white, and another quiche full of cheese, ham and onions. So try to avoid this error. Spoiler alert, I didn't stick to my own advice once again. I can see a recurring pattern here. So even though the video might not be the best example, take my words and give it a try. The whipped up filling is truly special. And maybe a question to you, my dear viewers. I'm still trying to figure out which kind of recipes to show on my channel. Should I just show everything? From very simple dishes to something extraordinary? Should I focus on fast weekday meals that are healthy yet delicious? Or should I stick to more traditional cooking and traditional variations of dishes like the quiche or the Königsberger Klopse and Spätzle videos I did some time ago? I'm very interested in your opinion, so please leave a comment. When it comes to putting the filling into your springform pans, make sure to spread it evenly between all of the quiches you want to prepare. And if you have done a good job with the rim of the dough, you won't risk burning anything in your springform pans. So please ignore my very unevenly sized rim. Man, I really do need to get better at cooking tutorials. If you want to include leek in your quiches, you can choose to put it into your filling straight away. Or if you want to prepare different kind of quiches like I do, simply add it later on once the filling is already in your springform pans. And that's it, the quiches are now finally ready for baking. Put them into your oven and let them bake for at least 30 minutes. Though if you go for multiple quiches like I do, you should probably plan for something like 45 minutes. And depending how good your oven is, you may need to swap the quiches from time to time. This way all of your quiches will bake more or less evenly. And with that said, we have arrived at yet another end of a Knobi Cooks episode. I hope you enjoyed today's video despite all the mishaps that happened to me during filming. Though if you stick to my advice, those mishaps shouldn't happen to you. And if you have successfully prepared a quiche by following my tutorial, let me know down below in the comments. I would be very happy to hear it. And of course also let me know whether it tasted good. I am Knobi Cooks and I see you in the next video. Goodbye.